Welcome to the 4th generation of the TaylorMade P790 iron. So the TaylorMade P790 iron, arguably TaylorMade's most popular iron they've ever sort of made. We've seen 3 generations. We're now looking at the 4th generation in this particular video. First impressions, it looks very similar to what we've seen previous, but TaylorMade is saying this is all about what's inside this head, which you're going to run through in this particular video. We're also going to test it up against the 2021 version to see if there are any gains to be seen in this new iron. So we're going to start off in the previous model, the 2021 version of the P790. I'm going to get familiar again with the looks and the feels. Before then I jump into the new one and we sort of test it to give us a bit of a comparison between the 2 models. So as I say, the 790 has been massively popular with a lot of golfers, you know, suiting different variety of golfers. You've seen those sort of mid, sometimes to higher handicap golfers moving into this when they like that sort of look and that sort of feel. Low handicap golfers, you know, maybe just wanting that little bit of forgiveness, maybe a little bit more power, but still wanting to keep those looks and that sort of forged feel. You know, this is where I think it does tick a lot of boxes. So that's the 2021 version of the P790. Familiarising myself with the looks and the feel of that particular club. Let's quickly check those numbers. Club head speed around that 90 for 7.9, typical for me. Ball speed just short of that 125 on average. Launch 17, spin 5,000 is a little bit on the low side. I'm a little bit of a low spin sort of player, carrying distance around that sort of 183. Peak height 102, descent angle 47.5. Okay, so let's switch into the new version, the 2023 model, the 4th generation of the popular P790. So first instincts of the visuals on the back, a very clean look. A little bit of a different look on the back in terms of that bar now just goes straight across. A little bit of change of the satin sort of finish, no high chrome finish that we saw in the little aspects of that iron, but again, really nice clean look at the back. Love the look of that. We still see that speed slot in there. We still see that screw in the toe section. We've obviously still got some tungsten in there, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. The word forged still appears on that hosel of the golf club. We know this is only a forged face, not a fully forged body, just to bear that in mind. But visually from the back, looks very nice. Into that playing position, and again, it's a very similar sort of shape, I would say, initially, when you look at it to the previous model. Putting them side by side, so 2021 model in my hands here as well, there is some little subtle changes there. The thing I would probably say is the newer version. This just looks to be a little bit more rounded, a little bit softer on the edges. So that top line looks to be very similar in terms of the thickness of it in comparison to the previous model, but just a little bit more, not quite as blocky looking, a little bit more rounded on those corners. The toe looks to be a little bit more sort of shaped and again a little bit softer on the edges. Blade length looks absolutely identical. Offset wise looks pretty identical. So some very subtle changes in the looks in that particular model. So just want to jump in there before we carry on the rest of this video. Who would like to see this new P790 up against the brand new Titleist T200? Both hollow constructions, both very popular irons. If you'd like to see that head-to-head video, then do comment down below. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that video, which will come soon. Okay, so that's the looks difference. Is there a preference there for me? I don't know, I prefer the look of maybe the new one just across the back of it, a little bit more simple, a little cleaner. That isn't going to change anything. Playing position, very, very similar. I do actually like just maybe the softer edges, not quite as blocky. Quite subtle, really. Let's see what the sound and the feel is like between these 2 irons. So let's get this first one hit with the new P790. Oh, that's a nice opener. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. The solid sort of feel to that, and TaylorMade have done a little bit of work to the sound inside this actual head. So 7.9 I've got, both of these 7.9s, both of the same shaft, both of the same makeup, both 30.5 degrees of loft. So I've not changed the loftings from the previous model to these new models, very much the same. So let's delve inside the head now of this new model. And this is where TaylorMade are saying things are quite different to what we've seen in previous models. So we've got what you call flighted CG. So basically each iron head inside is different from another. So the 4 iron to the 5 to the 6, 7, 8 and so on, they're all different inside the head depending on what you're trying to achieve. So we've got some tungsten in there, we've got up to 38 grams of it, depending which iron again you're looking at, and that's going to be positioned in slightly different positions. So really, in a nutshell, to make things a little bit easier, in those longer irons where you've got less loft, the tungsten's a little bit sort of deeper in the head, a little bit more aimed at trying to sort of obviously get a bit more of a flight or help with flight in that golf ball in those longer irons. And then progressively, as you move up in loft, that CG placement just starts to rise up the club face a little bit, and then creates a little bit more of a control of flight with a little bit more spin involved. So that's something that they've not done previously in the other models. We've had tungsten in there, and we've had the speed foam air, and we've still got that in this new one. It's just now the tungsten is positioned in different locations and different amounts in there. Now, to be honest, I'm going to be brutally honest, between those two, I'm struggling to feel a difference in terms of feel and sound between those two irons. So nothing really sort of jumps out to me straight away in the feel aspect. Looks are very, very subtle. Obviously, we're going to look at some numbers at the end and see if the performance numbers are any different. Really nice sort of ball flight on there, as you sort of expect. Pretty standard flight that I would like to sort of see with this iron. So again, moving back inside the head and towards the top at the back, we've got what we call a thin, thick back wall. So basically it's a very technical terminology, but look a little bit like a honeycomb effect there. So they're taking weight out of certain areas and then redistributing that, saving about 3-4 grams, which normally would have been just being thrown straight into the bottom of the golf club here to try and get that flight up. Whereas now, depending which iron you're looking at, it's now distributed in the right areas to optimize that CG location. And we've also got a sound stabilization bar, is what TaylorMade are called. So it's a little bit like certain irons. Again, it depends on which iron this is in, because the sounds will change depending on the number of iron you're actually hitting. So that bar is changing in club to club to try and control sort of sound around the head. As I say, we have got that speed foam air, that lighter speed foam. Again, that's saving a little bit of weight, which helps to just dampen a little bit of that sound. Oh, right, okay, so there's a little bit of test now, because that was a touch low on that club face. That felt a little bit thin. Definitely could feel that through the vibration of the golf club. And interestingly, you can see that distance hasn't dropped off. Good bit of ball speed from that sort of low strike. Maybe a little bit of that speed slot doing its job in the bottom of the club, creating that little bit of flex. Yeah, feels good, feels solid. Lovely ball flight. Nice and high. It looks to have a little bit of stopping power there, some decent ball speed there, to be honest. It'd be interesting to have a look at the numbers in a second. But yeah, land angle coming in at 50 degrees, plenty of stopping power. So availability wise, in the new P790, it comes 3 iron all the way through to pitching wedge, and that gap wedge is in there, but available in both right and left hand. Let's go and check a few numbers. So as you've probably just been seeing there, dispersion wise, obviously I had a real leaky one there with the new one. That's obviously more me than the actual golf club itself. But the big thing there, even with that leaky one right, which typically would drop off a little bit in distance, the front to back dispersion has been really, really tight. The old one wasn't bad there, to be honest, but TaylorMade did say that they've done some work in terms of reducing any hot spots on the club. Sometimes we see that in that typical lofted of around that 30-degree mark, 7 iron, sometimes even the stronger lofts, hollow construction. Sometimes we see those little sort of flyer shots we get out there, but it's typically been quite controlled there. So the number's quite interesting there. See club head speed pretty much identical there, a hair faster with the new one, but literally half a mile an hour over a few shots there, so there's nothing in it at all. Ball speed wise, a little bit of a jump there, and I felt like I struck them pretty much the same, to be honest. I didn't feel like I struck one better than the other, but a nice bit of jump in ball speed, which is good. Launch a touch higher, spin very, very similar at that 4,900, just under that 5,000 mark. It is a little bit low, but I have got that stopping power in terms of that descent angle. So you see a little bit of a higher flight there, a little bit of a more of a descent angle, and obviously that little bit more distance there on that particular shot with very similar sort of numbers. So a nice little ball speed again from myself in that particular test. Post comments down below, let me know your thoughts. Appreciate you watching the video as always, and hopefully we'll catch up with you all very soon.